Another edition of Beat the Closing Number presented by thelines.com. My name is Eli Hershkovich. You can follow me on Twitter at Eli Hershkovich. You can follow my co-host, Nuwwarah, to my right virtually on Twitter at Nuwwarah. And you can follow thelines.com as well at The Lines US. Recording here on Thursday, April 20th, breaking down two MLB games. Padres and D-backs first up, and then Mets at Giants. But first things first, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications whenever The Lines releases a new sports betting video on any market, including Major League Baseball. And also check out The Lines Beat the Closing Number podcast with Spreadopedia from this morning as we broke down all things MLB futures and no-run first inning bets. You will not want to miss what our guest Spreadopedia had to compare no-run first inning bets, otherwise known as Nerfies, to. Be sure to check that out on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. So, Mo, let's get started with Pads at D-backs. This is a 9:40 first pitch. The Padres have underperformed up until this point at 9-11. Arizona in first place, believe it or not, in the NL West at 11-8. San Diego up to minus 145 on the money line, a little bit of a bump from the opener. I believe you got it right around minus 130. Michael Wacha will take on Ryan Nelson of the D-backs. And most importantly, headline-wise, Fernando Tatis Jr. is back for San Diego for the first time since first serving that 80-game PED suspension. 8 games in the minor leagues to date this season, 7 home runs, 15 RBI, 2 stolen bases, a 7.7 strikeout rate, which is notable considering his chase rate when he was in the majors over the last couple of years. Didn't play last season with the wrist injury combined with the suspension. But also, the most notable on this list, a 1.802 OPS. And Tatis is tied with Pete Alonso of the Mets for the fourth shortest NL MVP odds at DraftKings Sportsbook at 10-1. Ronald Acuna Jr., who opened the season as the favorite, right along with Juan Soto, has now become the consensus favorite for the NL MVP award at plus 350. So, Mo, 2 parts to this. I mentioned you're betting Padres. Why? And what do you make of Fernando Tatis's fairly low NL MVP odds?
I guess first off, I would say the MVP odds seem insane to me. I think this is one of the issues with your Bogarts bet that we've talked about. While he's a great
coming
player
at me just right from the jump
and projects to be well within striking distance of anybody in terms of WAR, I think it obviously helps to be like the clear-cut best player on an elite team. It's going to be hard to be the clear-cut best player on the Padres because of how good their team is, but also because of this time he's missed when he is going to end up with a lower WAR probably than some other players, but maybe not, maybe not if he hits like this. I mean, this is obviously pretty insane what he's doing. He has a 697 isolated slugging, which is absolutely outrageous. We talked about this. I think we talked about this yesterday. He's terrorizing these poor AAA pitchers. As far as today goes, it is Michael Wacha going. I watched his last start where he got shelled from the hotel lobby in San Diego. I think it was the day after the game we went to. I thought his stuff looked fine, even as the Brewers were pounding him. And his peripherals tell me his stuff is fine. More swings and misses actually than last year by a decent margin. His called strike plus whiff rate is up almost 5%, and that moves him from well below average, which is why I kept fading him last year, and he kept sticking it in my eye. And now he's above average. So we'll see if that continues. It's still obviously early. His fastball velocity is a bit below last year's, but it's been trending up every start so far. He's gone up a half tick. So I think he's going to be at last year's number in no time. I'm not really worried about it. And they're facing off with Ryan Nelson here. He's not been able to get any chases, really, 20% outside the zone swing rate. I'm not sure he has a way to get lefties out. I was looking at his pitch mix. It's basically fastball slider. Padres do have some pretty tough lefties, and obviously when they're right-handed bats, they're adding Tatis. I think this is the best lineup in baseball probably with Tatis in there. So did get steam this morning. Unfortunately for the viewers who are not in the Discord, missed out on some value here, but I still think there was a minus 140 a little bit before record at BetMGM. I still think that's playable. Anything below minus 145 is probably okay. It's definitely getting close, though. I think we got closer to minus 130 last night.
Over to the second game that you're betting. And by the way, just want to go back to your first point about Bogarts. His number, NL MVP odds, not that it matters necessarily, and it's going to happen when a player is off to a hot start. I got Bogarts at 40-1 to win an NL MVP, and his odds are down to as low as 25-1. That's because he's getting on base at an absurd rate, pretty much has a hit or has been on base in every single game this season. We'll see if the power numbers start to tick up, because that's what he's going to need to do, along with the Padres starting to find their way back into the NL West, top of the NL West standings. Long way to go, like we touched on with Spreadopedia yesterday on the long form version of Beat the Closing Number. You don't want to take too much out of a small sample size, but the Mets start at 12-7 certainly is nothing of that nature, as the Mets won or at least made the playoffs last year. Almost won the NL East. I believe the Braves ended up finishing first in that division. So Mets at Giants tonight in San Francisco, 9:45 first pitch Eastern Standard Time. And the Mets right around a minus 120 favorite, down actually to minus 115 at DraftKings as of this recording on Thursday morning. And you remember, you can find the best of the number on any market, including Mets and Giants money line odds at thelines.com. It is Kodai Senga, the rookie from Japan, who is tied for the third shortest NL Rookie of the Year odds at around plus 500. He's taken on the southpaw Sean Manaea, who has a low and I guess high, depending on how you want to look at it, a 7.42 xERA. But that velo is up from last season across the board, and the Mets, dating back to last year as well, have a pretty low WRC plus, at least in comparison to the way they've shelled righties, again, going back to the 2022 campaign, and they rank right around league average in regards to WRC plus against lefties this year, which again, Manaea is a southpaw. So how are you betting Mets at Giants, Mo?
Yeah, unfortunately, I did take a number that's worse than what we're looking at now on the Mets. I fired at Mets minus 120. So this one, you can get a better price than I got if you do so choose to follow along. I think the Mets are just a solidly better team pretty much across the board than the Giants, with a better pitcher on the mound here. I'm a bit surprised the number is getting close to almost minus 110 the way it's going, but we'll see. Sometimes there's some buyback, and sometimes these early moves can prove to be nothing. But it's like you said with Manaea, the xERA is rough. I think the command's been pretty bad so far. His velocity bump is large, like multiple miles per hour. That's usually a situation where I'm looking to buy. But I was looking at, I think some of it is because he changed his fastball from a sinker to a four-seamer, and I don't think he's commanding it very well. Very bad called strike rate, very high barrel rate. The StatCast numbers, like you said, 7.42 xERA. It's telling me people are just hammering the baseball off him. The barrel rate's like triple league average, I think. So it could just be small sample, but I've always found his fastball to be pretty meaty. Like, people just kind of tee off on it a lot, I think, especially in recent years as he has lost velocity. I don't know if throwing harder is going to help him if his command is this rough, because he was always a big command guy when he was mostly, sinker, change, slider. I think the Mets, it's weird though. Like you said, they haven't been great against lefties, but I do kind of think they profile as a team that should hit lefties pretty hard. A lot of right-handed batters, and lefties they do have Jeff McNeil, Brandon Nimmo. These guys don't have like much of platoon splits. I mean, they do, but they're platoon splits are like above average versus lefties and great versus righties, and not like bad versus lefties and great versus righties. I think Senga is a tough one to get a read on as well, to be honest. Lots of strikeouts, lots of ground balls, but lots of walks, lots of homers as well. So I'm still trying to figure out what to make of him. Since I have some money on this one, probably watch Senga and see if I can get a better read on him. The Giants, they don't chase a lot, which I think is bad against Senga because he's throwing that the ghost forkball, they call it. I think it's closest to a splitter, but nobody really knows, I think, for sure. They don't chase a lot, which I think is bad. But also, like I said, if it's closest to a splitter, the Giants have been bad against splitters this year, and they were bad versus splitters last year. So I think that could help Senga here. Not as exciting for sure today's plays as the Twins were yesterday. That was probably one of the best spots of the year. Don't think we will get another one that good for some time, but did play the Mets at minus 120.
And you mentioned the Twins yesterday. That is a part of that was a winner, Minnesota at Boston. And Mo is on a 7-1, although there have been a lot of runs in that stretch. Baseball run with his bets. And Mo, I know you don't want to pump yourself up, so I'm going to allow you to avoid that potential question. But when it comes to your process for MLB betting, I think that's the best way for you to go about this, at least in how you want to answer it. So for the average bettor that might see a big baseball run from a capper they follow, or if they go on a hot baseball stretch themselves, that might lead to them increasing their portfolio in regards to MLB bets on a given day or given week, just because they may be red hot or having a really nice day, really nice month even. So how do you go about your sample size, or just your unit size, even if you want to take it one way or the other, the amount of games you bet, the amount of money you put down on bets when you are hot? We both know how, maybe not the pro bettor, I don't think either of us are pro bettors, but we do bet a lot more than the casual or average bettor we have in the past. So either way, whatever way you want to take it, whether it's, again, the amount of games you bet when you are rolling in regards to Major League Baseball or any sport, or the amount of money you're putting down on a given bet.
Usually trying to only bet more if I think there's a bigger edge, to be honest. For instance, that Twins game yesterday, I definitely did go quite a bit bigger on that one. But when I am grading these, I'm usually grading them flat because it makes it easier, and I don't want people to go on 40-unit swings like I do sometimes. Then they would really be upset. But when we go on a downer, but yeah, it's not too crazy for sure. Most of the time I'm in the same ballpark with most of the bets, and then usually not trying to get too caught up in a hot streak or anything, because like I said, I've gone on 40-unit ups, 40-unit downs, and just very well for sure that you can't get too caught up in the wins or the losses, and just try to move on to the next day, Of
course, and a lot of cappers like to get all into themselves when they get really hot, whether it's, again, baseball or NBA. The NBA playoffs, of course, Mo is handicapping, not only in our Discord channel, which you could find on thelines.com, our free Discord channel, putting his bets in daily, but he also has a bunch of write-ups over at thelines.com and had a nice winner yesterday on the Grizzlies. And no, I'm not just giving Mo props because he had a winner. Mo and I both have had our fair share of losers, not only in recent weeks, but also in recent months and many, many years in the past and many more years to come. So by no means are we saying the losses don't happen, and we're not acknowledging those. But Mo, regardless, is one of the best baseball handicappers around, so be sure to follow him on Twitter, as it's spelled on the screen, at Mo Nuwwarah. Follow The Lines on Twitter, at The Lines US. And we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of Beat the Closing Number. Talk to you then.